The number one question I get asked on my social media every single day is how I edit the pictures taken with this guy. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to talk about exactly that. How I go from taking the picture on this iPhone 13 Pro Max and editing it to look something like this. Now, the look of the final image is not just in the edit or in the apps I use, it's also in how the image is taken, which is where we're going to start with this video. When it comes to camera settings, there's honestly not too much to remember. Me personally, I like to shoot in the native camera app on the iPhone, and I shoot everything in the 9:16 format because I find that a lot of my pictures end up on Instagram stories, and if they don't, they end up in feed in 4:5, so I have the opportunity to crop for 4:5 after. I don't usually shoot RAW on the iPhone because I don't find that I need that extra latitude when it comes to the RAW file. I'm usually throwing my photos into a simple editing app, changing the colors, exporting them, putting them right into Instagram, and off they go. If I do need the RAW file, then I will shoot RAW on the iPhone, but honestly, I've only done that maybe a couple times in the 2 years I've had this phone. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the camera settings. It's pretty simple, pretty basic. The more important step is in the actual taking the picture. Now, when shooting with your iPhone or any camera phone for that matter, the number one thing you want to remember is that they are not good at highlights. Now, what does that mean? Well, first, let's talk about what is a highlight in an image. The highlights are any super bright or white portion of the image. For me here, it's like my forehead, maybe parts of my gray sweater, maybe the white background. And then the opposite of that is the shadows. So maybe the darker portion over here by the plant, or over there in that dark corner, or the black of the microphone. Those are the shadows. I find that with phone cameras, the shadows are produced pretty well, but the highlights are just not good at all if it's a super bright scenario where the shadows and highlights are very contrasty. Having the highlights blown out in an image is the number one first sign that a picture is amateur and not professional looking. So how do you combat this? Easy. When taking the picture, you want to first tap on the screen wherever the focal point is of the image, aka where you want the actual focus to be on the image. After tapping it, you want to swipe your finger down just slightly until all of the highlights on the important part of the image, aka a person or a subject or a building, are all evenly exposed. Nothing is blown out, nothing is white. You can see all the detail in all parts of that object. Once you do that, then just take the picture. Now, here's an example of a blown out image where the highlights are completely blown out. They are white, they are amateur looking, and then here's the exact same image with exposure correctly adjusted. I could probably give you another 4 hours straight on just taking the actual image, but we will save that for a future video. Let's move on to the apps I use. For my photos, I'm honestly using VSCO Cam more than 90% of the time, and that's just because I've gotten really used to the app. I love the edits it produces, and it's super easy and quick for me to turn over images from shooting it to posting it on Instagram. The other 10% of the time is either in Lightroom or in the actual Photos app on the iPhone. If it's just an easy adjustment of exposure and brilliance, then I'll just do it in the actual Photos app. And then Lightroom I'll use if I really want to dial in things like my tone curve or HSL adjustments, things like that. But again, most of the time, it's just super quick and easy to use VSCO. So this is what VSCO Cam looks like when you first have it open. And let's just open up this first image here, which is a picture I took this morning at the beach actually. And this is just how it came out of the camera on the iPhone. We're going to tap into edit on the bottom left corner, and then you're going to have all of these different presets. Now, I pay for the VSCO Premium, which I believe is about $30 for the whole year. I think that's a great deal for how much functionality you are getting in the app, but nonetheless, VSCO does have a free version that does have, I would say, a good portion of the things that I'm going to talk about today in just that free plan alone. Now, in the Essentials tab down here, I'm going to swipe across until I see the preset M5. I do use other presets like A6, HP2, I could go on and on, but M5, again, is like my bread and butter. It's what I go to almost every single time for my style. It just works, but for you, you might want to find your own look and feel. Either way, all of these editing tips are going to apply for whatever preset you choose. So I'm going to tap M5 right here. And then out the gate, it does look pretty good, but if you ask me, the preset is quite strong. So I'm gonna actually tap M5 again, and by default, it's at plus 12 strength for the preset. I'm gonna bring that all the way back down to maybe plus 8, and then press the check mark on the bottom right-hand corner. Then still on the bottom left, you're gonna see a couple of slider icons. That is where you go into to start to edit the actual image. And first things first, I'm gonna swipe over to the exposure edit and bring that number down to, for this image, I would say maybe negative 1.5. Then I'll go into the contrast edit and bring that down a little bit, maybe to negative 1. The reason I bring contrast down and not up is because contrast will kind of smoothen out everything from the bright whites to the dark blacks in the image and give it more of a film soft look. If you go too far, then the image will start to look super washed out, and if you go too far in the positive, it will start to look super punchy and over-processed. So I like to keep it between negative 1 to negative 2. Then I'll go into sharpen and bring the sharpening all the way up to plus 3. I find that it doesn't over-process the image, it looks quite sharp and quite nice, and it just adds some extra quality to the image. In saturation, this is very dependent on the actual scenario. For this image, I'm going to bring the saturation up to probably about 1.8. I think that looks quite nice, but in other images, I might bring the saturation down to negative 1, negative 0.5, anything that looks kind of even for the scenario that you're in. Next, I'll go into the HS tone, which is your highlight and shadow tone, and I'll bring the highlights all the way up, all the way to anywhere between 7 or 8, and then I'll bring the shadows just slightly up to 0.5. Now, the reason I bring the highlights all the way up to 7 or 8 is because the highlight slider in the positive direction will preserve those whites and kind of make them more off-white or gray color, which again, for that film look is very key. And then the shadows I'll bring up just a little bit, in this case to 0.6, just to retain some of that detail that we lost in the dark parts of the image. And then my favorite portion, which is white balance. Again, this is very subjective for every single image, but for the most part, if you're using the M5 preset like I am, I'm gonna bring my tint down to about negative 1. I think that looks nice. And my temperature up to about positive 1. Bringing the tint down into the green area will give it a nice green overcast to the entire image, especially the white portion of the image, and bringing the temperature up to +1 will again give it a warmer, orangier hue throughout. And then out of all the apps, including Lightroom, including me finicking with even Photoshop sometimes, I think that VSCO Cam has one of the best built-in grain features of any program I've ever used. If we go into grain, I'm going to pump this number up to something like 2.5. Now on a small device like a phone, you won't really see that grain, but if you compare it to the original, you definitely will tell the difference. And that's pretty much it for how I edit almost every single one of my photos. So here is a quick before and after. Now, like I mentioned earlier, M5 is kind of my bread and butter when it comes to editing on VSCO Cam, but I do use other presets from time to time, like A6 and other ones, depending on the type of shot or the type of style I'm going for. If it was maybe a flash photo at night, sunset, sunrise, white studio, there's a million different scenarios and different presets will work better for different types of shots. In the future, I want to do more shot-specific editing in VSCO Cam for YouTube and kind of break down the types of presets I would use for different styles of photography. And that's pretty much it. And then now that that image was shot in 9x16, it's exposed correctly when I shot it, and then it's edited the way that I edit all my photos in VSCO Cam, it is ready for social media. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys learned a thing or two about how I edit images on my phone, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.